A big welcome back, folks, to the Motorsport podcast. My name is Evan. It's a pleasure to be back with you once again for what will be a slightly shorter episode this time, but once again running you through our ICCR race reviews. This is the series that will be keeping up to date with all things national circuit racing, and we're pleased to be back for a second episode. Disclaimer, shorter episode, less interviews this week. That won't be the case going forward. Just a busy time for Motorsport, but we will have more for you in round number 3, as well as some more interviews coming soon. But look, let's not hang about. We'll get straight into things and review the recent weekend of ICCR action in Mondello Park. And it was a slightly smaller weekend. The junior minis, of course, not racing, being exam season and all that. I think that's a fairly smart decision by the respective organising bodies, but so a slightly smaller weekend. But it was great to have Formula Boss back. They made their Mondello debut for this year, so great to have Formula Boss back at the circuit, and was an interesting couple of races for Formula Boss. Sometimes Formula Boss can become a little bit processional, but good to say that wasn't the case this weekend. But we will start with a different form of single-seater racing, and that was Formula Shane, which for the first time in 2026 sees a winner that is not Richard Carney. And Chris McCabe and Enda O'Connor both took wins this week, or in the most recent weekend of ICCR. And your podium for race number 1 was Chris McCabe, Sean Kiernan, and then it was Richard Carney. It was a non-finish, unfortunately, for Enda O'Connor, so that hurt his chances. But he bounced back nicely, and he did win race number 2 ahead of Richard Carney and Chris McCabe. So Formula Shane was looking like it would be a fairly one-sided affair for 2026. But good to see that won't be the case, and Chris McCabe and Enda O'Connor both being able to put it up to Richard Carney. One of the young stars of Formula Shane, Roisin Sweeney, unfortunately not able to race this weekend. More car troubles plaguing Roisin's season. So hopefully that all gets sorted and there's an extra car on the Formula Shane grid, because in the races Roisin has run has been fairly competitive. It just seems to be issue after issue there, unfortunately, so hopefully that gets ironed out soon. But a mixed weekend for Formula Shane, but a good one, beneficial one. Next up is then Future Classics, of course, the only class in Mondello with a barrier time, a very different format of racing compared to usual. Again, very interesting weekend in Future Classics. The routine was kind of broken, and we had a couple of different winners throughout the weekend. So in race number 1, 2 classes of Future Classics, of course, Super Future and Future. And in Super Future, it was Ken Byrne who took the opening win, ahead of Noel Conaghy in second. I believe that's Noel's first Super Future podium this season, since graduating from the Future class after winning it in 2025. Mark Johnston then came home in third in that one. In Future, it was a win for Martin Finnegan ahead of Zoe Nicholson in second, and then Barry O'Hara coming home in third. So good win for Martin there in the Future class. Race 2 then saw Ken Byrne do the double. He took the win ahead of Aidan Byrne in second position. Noel Conaghy then in third. And then in Future, it was Barry O'Hara who took the win ahead of Martin Finnegan in second, and Laura Hannon in third in the Mazda, the only Mazda, or only non-Mini Cooper, I should say, racing in Future Classics this weekend. So well done, Laura, on taking the podium. Martin Finnegan certainly one to watch in the Future class going forward, has ran competitively throughout the season, so best of luck to Martin in there. But Super Future kind of opening up. Ken Byrne taking 2 wins. Noel Conaghy ran very competitively as well, got second and third. So Super Future in the Future Classics class is certainly opening up, and one to keep an eye on. So big congratulations to all the runners there, and a fantastic grid. There was a brilliant grid in Bishop's Court, there was a great grid in Mondello as well, so good to see Future Classics racing is on the up. Next up is our Strikers, and the fantastic Strikers cars spilled a lot of oil on Saturday in Mondello. Unfortunately, Brendan Curran did have a lot of issues, and it's the most oil I've ever seen on a racetrack anyways that was spilled. The Mondello rescue team did a great job on clearing it up as much as they could. It did lead to a very slippy track, so for Strikers, I should say, didn't have the easiest of conditions. Well, Kevin McGrath found it A-OK, and he took 2 wins in Strikers this weekend. So Kevin McGrath, race 1 winner, ahead of Des Bruton and then David Reynolds in 3rd. But David Reynolds promoted himself to 2nd for race number 2. So it was Kevin McGrath on top, ahead of David Reynolds, and then Roger Welleretna taking 3rd position. So once again, Kevin McGrath on form in the Strikers, and David Reynolds keeping with him. So it is still McGrath versus Reynolds for the championship. Unfortunately, no championship standings to update you on, folks. Despite what the Google AI tells you, they haven't been published on the website. So unfortunately for that, no update there. But Kevin McGrath really running strong in Mondello. David Reynolds ran very well in Bishop's Court. But it's still an open season, really. When you have 2 drivers who are both taking consistent podiums and both battling for wins, it can be too close to call sometimes. But it certainly does seem like McGrath would be the favourite after the most recent round of Strikers. But hopefully more cool stuff coming up with Strikers for you folks, so keep an eye on that. Next up then, we move along to Irish Formula V. Oh, here's his favourite segment to talk about, Formula V. Unfortunately, the only interviews we do have this week is for Formula V due to various logistical issues on Sunday. That's an excellent excuse, and that's the one I'm going to stick with. Only the one race for Formula V, and it was Conor Melia who took the win, and of Jack Byrne in 2nd, and Travis Mawhinney in 3rd. And you may be thinking, is that the same Travis Mawhinney who races Fiestas in Northern Ireland? Well, it absolutely is, and Travis was the latest RTA Virtual Motorsport driver to take to the grid. Got pole on Saturday morning, chucked out as quick as he got it for being rather hilariously underweight. It wouldn't have made as much of a difference in the wet as it did in the dry, but it was still rather humorous. Looking back on it, I'm sure Johnny, as he's listening to this, wants to punch me because he found it anything but hilarious, but it was quite funny. He then drove from 21st to 3rd in his first ever race in the class. And some people still have the cheek to say sim racers can't race, but that was an excellent result from Travis, and you can hear from him now.
Travis Mawhinney, first time out in a Formula V, from the back of the grid to the podium. How does that feel?
Feels amazing. I mean, I was on pole at one point by about half a tenth, but the thing was, when we got the car scaled on get weighed, it was like 20 kilos under. So the team was trying to find as much lead as possible to try and get the weight back, so I won't get disqualified for the race. So then during the race it was very, very slippery and there was a lot of oil on the track, so I was trying to be very careful and not to spin out in any way. Other people were spinning out and I was trying my best to try and avoid everyone and make some moves, and in the end I got a podium, so I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, lap 1 you got to 9th on the first lap alone. Talk us through that. That must have been crazy.
I was told either in the first lap I made it up to 9th or 12th. I've heard from Dory that she had a screenshot saying that I was 12th in the first lap, but I don't really care. I mean, the first lap was very hectic. Everyone was going off the track because of how slippery the track was, and I was just trying my best to try and get past everyone as soon as possible just to avoid that much chaos. And after that, it was sort of smooth sailing, trying to get a bit of extra positions from beyond lap 1, and in the end is podium. I'm very ecstatic, I really am.
Will we see you back out in the Formula V?
Depends on the budget. We'll have to try and get some sponsors, but we'll see.
And then the winner in Irish Formula V for the first time this season was Conor Melia of SM Racing. Both Conor and SM Racing have had various issues throughout the season, but it all came together in the wet on Saturday. It was a remarkable battle between himself and Jack Byrne. Really, really hair-raising stuff. But all clean, all fair, and it was an excellent battle. Really a statement to how good wheel-to-wheel racing can be in Mondello Park in wet conditions. But congratulations to Conor on the win, and now let's hear what he thought about it.
Conor Melia, Formula V round 6 winner. How does that feel?
Unbelievable. Still can't quite believe it. I was the longest race of my life. Leading the races feel much longer than 20 odd minutes, however long they are. It feels great to win a second one, just so that, the first one, proving it wasn't a fluke. So that was, it was unbelievable. It feels so good.
It was a tough race. You had Jack Byrne behind you the whole time. How did you cope with the pressure?
Yeah, well, I had Kieran in front of me, and Jack, I threw it off into the gravel just to spice things up a bit, and got back by them. And holding off Jack is not an easy thing to do, especially in conditions like that. There was oil all over the place. There was no line that could be taken that didn't have oil. So it was just about keeping the thing on the track and trusting Jack. And in fairness, Jack did a great job. We went side by side a few times. There's a lot of kind of respectful racing, which was really fun. But the pressure, I was more focused, to be honest, on not throwing the car off again, which did help in fairness. I wasn't watching my mirrors as much, except that one time in turn 1, which was a bit close. But,
So second in the championship coming into the round. You've had a troubling start to the season, but is it time to put all that behind you and go for glory?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be tough to catch just because the Bishop's Court was particularly, we'll probably have to take those as drops, and a fourth and a third. And because there aren't many A runners out this season, it'll be tough to close that gap. But I mean, we'll do our best. We have 4. We lost by 4 points last year, so we have that to beat.
So next up, and moving on to Sunday's action, is our Fiesta Z-Tech class, and a massive congratulations to the organisers of the Fiesta Z-Tech class. A max capacity field for the tin top racers. That's insane, and fair play to them. Z-Tech racing is just on the up. I'm very much looking forward to the 6 hour this year, because we should have more cars than ever on it, given how many people are interested in Fiesta Z-Tech racing. So big congratulations to Neil and the organising crew there. But it was the man who actually left the class who won again. Sean McGovern on top, ahead of Sam Doyle and Andy Kavanagh. Sean and Sam, both long-time Z-Tech racers. Sean making his debut in Honda Civic Cup UK this season, racing in Pembrey, I believe the next round is. Sam Doyle made his debut in Formula V this weekend. Raced Formula V on the Saturday, Fiestas on the Sunday, got the podium on the Sunday. Congratulations, Sam. That's not easy to do. Absolutely not easy to do, and a real solid effort. So congratulations to Sam on taking second place there. And then Andy Kavanagh in third. The second race on the Sunday saw Ian Fishburne take the win, ahead of Michael Keogh in second, and then Sean McGovern in third, meaning weekend 1 and weekend 2 had the exact same winners in both races, McGovern, Fishburne. So despite having max capacity field, the creme de la creme still rising to the top. And a great result for Ian Fishburne there in race number 2. Winner, of course, of the 6 hour last year with the Murray brothers. And one of the Murray brothers, Niall, recently became a father. So congratulations, Niall. And hope all is well there. Speaking of Murrays, next up, Seat Super Cup. And it is one of the faster classes of the weekend. Also had a couple of interesting storylines, and that was your race 1 winner was Shane Murphy, who returned to the class for 2026 and has taken his first win since his return. Won 5 championships in a row in Seat Super Cup Ireland, and has taken the win in Mondello. Stephen Wright came home in second, ahead of Victor Cullen in third. Victor still waiting on his first win of the year for the new team. But look, a steady podium is exactly what the doctor ordered in what is a championship winning endeavour, hopefully for Victor come the end of 2026. Race 2 then saw Paul Parr take the win, ahead of Max Turley in second position and Stephen Wright in third. Max returning to the class for this weekend is the 2025 champion. Don't believe he's doing a full season, but he took second place in that race behind the experienced Paul Parr. Stephen Wright, the only driver to stand on both rostrums across the weekend, which goes to show how open this year's championship is. But Stephen certainly in pole position to take the crown come the end of the year, and has been driving the wheels off that Seat Super Cup this year. Now moving on to our other Fiesta class of racing. It is our Fiesta STs, and again an ever-expanding grid in Fiesta STs, but it didn't have much ambiguity as Derek Graham took both wins in Fiesta STs at the weekend. He took the win in race number 1 and race number 2. Tim McQuaid was second in race number 1 ahead of Daniel McDonnell in race number 1, third in race number 1. Then in race number 2 it was Derek Graham who took the win ahead of Adam O'Mahony and Charlie McKillen. So two young racers, Adam and Charlie, both with good strong results in race number 2. And Adam with a little bit of a comeback drive to stand on the rostrum. So Fiesta STs with an expanding grid. Thankfully no fisticuffs in the paddock this week. But Derek Graham still the dominant force in that class. And our final tin top class is the Irish Touring Car Championships, which saw another double winner. And this time it was Ross Aspel who took the win in both races. David McMinn was second in both of them. But a different podium placer in both. In race number 1 it was Pat O'Malley, and in race number 2 it was Luke Marmion. So interesting to see Ross Aspel do the double in the Irish Touring Car Championships. It hasn't been as regimented this year, the Irish Touring Car Championship, but certainly Ross Aspel putting them on the straight and narrow in terms of who the dominant force is, with a double win at the weekend and now in championship contention in the Irish Touring Car Championship. Of course, 2 different classes, or 3 in theory in the Irish Touring Car Championship, but I think we only have 1 in one of them, which, I mean, it's a win every weekend, but it's not very competitive in terms of a championship. So Ross Aspel taking the win there in the Irish Touring Car Championship. Very solid effort for Ross, and I'm sure he'll be looking to continue that throughout the rest of the season. And finally, our final class of the weekend is Formula Boss. And Formula Boss, again, usually one that follows a fairly routine order. Whoever's quickest in practice and qualifying will win the races, but not this weekend. We had the return of 2 drivers. We had Sylvie Mullins and Paul O'Connell return. O'Connell also racing in the European Boss Championships and had a decent outing in the Nürburgring. But he returned to Montello Park and was not far off the lap record in qualifying, set by Mullins, of course. But then the rain came down, so that was the end of that. But Sylvie Mullins took the race 1 win ahead of O'Connell in his Dallara World Series in race number 2, and then Lee Malone in 3rd in the Raltor T4, a 1984 spec machine, a beautiful car turned out by Lee Malone, a former car of the Files family. Jack Files racing in Formula Boss this season, of course, one of the youngest to ever do so. Didn't stand on the podium, unfortunately, this weekend. Had trouble in race 2 when he was on course for a good result. But yeah, Jack driving really well in Formula Boss, and a name to keep at the top of your mind for the future. But race number 2 was won by Paul O'Connell. Paul actually started from the pit lane and then had various issues, so Lee Malone really put it up to him. Mullins didn't get out. So it was O'Connell versus Malone for the win. Lee Malone led the majority of the race, but that pace of the World Series car just had enough. There was various spins and various moments on the main straight. For some of the cars, it was quite wet, still slippy due to the weather. But Lee Malone in 2nd and Martin Daly in 3rd. But that was a real solid effort by Lee Malone in the Raltor T4, and he was wheeling that thing. A former Legends racer, it certainly suited him the conditions. But unfortunately just lost out to O'Connell in the World Series car. And that, folks, is your most recent weekend of Irish National Circuit racing in Montello Park. Apologies about a much shorter episode this time, but hopefully it gave you a little bit of a review and reflection on the weekend that we had. The next episodes will be longer, will be more detailed, and we'll have more in store for you folks. But for now, please do follow Bois Motorsport on whatever social media platform is the one of your choosing. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube, and we thank you very much for your time listening, viewing, watching, whatever you may be doing. Stay safe, stay well. Launch it.